The United States has offered to provide NATO-style security guarantees for Kyiv. That as US and European negotiators reported progress in talks to end Russia's war in Ukraine. However, any kind of deal on territorial concessions remains elusive. The talks in Berlin, though, sparking some optimism from European leaders on a path to end Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II. Let's hear the response, though, from Donald Trump.
Should have never happened, should have never started. That war should have never, ever started. But it did, and we're trying to get it solved. That was Biden's situation. We're trying to get it done. And I think we're closer now, and they will tell you that they're closer now. We had numerous conversations with President Putin of Russia, and I think we're closer now than we have been ever. And we'll see what we can do. We want to save a lot of lives. We sell equipment to NATO. We don't spend any money, but we do want to see if we can save a lot of lives.
Donald Trump there. Well, let's talk about the latest with our international affairs editor, Philip Turle, who's with me. Philip, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz saying 90% of the work has been done. What, though, is the 10% that hasn't? Where are the stumbling blocks?
Let's put it this way, shall we, Stuart? I think in many cases 10% could be the make or break percentage. The 90% was probably the easy part. We don't know exactly, but there are several reasons to be optimistic. The Europeans say from these talks that they've made a lot of progress. A lot of thanks once again for Donald Trump, the US president, for all the efforts that he's put into trying to broker some kind of peace deal between the Ukrainians and the Russians. Let's go into this in a little bit more detail, shall we? There are three important areas that have been discussed in these talks in Berlin. The first one is territorial exchanges, then security guarantees and frozen Russian assets. So let's look at those one by one, starting with the territorial exchanges. Now, there is still a big gap because Russia is saying that it wants the Donetsk region, Donbass, and it will not settle for anything less than that. Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, has said that it's up to Ukraine to decide what territory, if any, it's going to hand over. And it's also up to Ukraine to decide how that would happen, probably through a referendum. So that is, I think, probably the main hurdle that we are up against in these talks right now. Second point, security guarantees. This is really, I think, what has been discussed the most over the past 24 hours. The US has said it's ready to offer what it's calling a platinum standard deal, which is take it now or it might not be on the table for very long, basically for the creation of a Ukraine NATO-like security guarantee organization, like the Article 5 that NATO has, that if there's an attack against one NATO country, it's an attack against all NATO countries. The US would be willing to get involved in that. And Zelensky has signaled for the first time that he is willing to do away with the idea that Ukraine one day would become a member of NATO, but there is progress on Ukraine becoming a member of the European Union. Also, Ukraine will be able to keep hold of 800,000 troops, which is something that was also being discussed beforehand, of being brought down to 600,000. And then we move on to the frozen Russian assets. These are still on the table. Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, has been more positive about it than he has been in the past, saying, yes, it's still being discussed. There's going to be a meeting of the European Council this week on Thursday where he's expecting progress to be made on working out some kind of deal on the 210 billion euros that's frozen in Europe. It's been indefinitely frozen until the end of the war, but now to undo that, the Europeans only need a majority vote in Parliament, and they don't need a total agreement from all European countries. Notably, Hungary said it was against it, so is Slovakia. So all of those are positive steps forward. I think that will be the discussion that will take place when the European Council is set to meet on Thursday. So a lot of progress, a lot of optimism. Even Donald Trump, who phoned into the dinner last night, is saying, yes, we've made a lot of progress. I think the final 10%, though, is going to be the most difficult.
Yeah, as we saw there, talks in Berlin, but France's President Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer of the UK, joined those talks as well during dinner last night. They're really pushing, aren't they, for stronger security guarantees. What could that actually mean?
Well, that's where there are a lot of unanswered questions that I think still need to be resolved. The first one is, will there be boots on the ground? And if so, what boots will those be? So far, the Coalition of the Willing, which has been agreed upon by 30 or so European countries, has said that there will be boots on the ground, principally supplied by the British and the French, to maintain military aid, ensure territorial integrity, strengthen Ukraine's military capacity, and provide peacekeeping forces. Will the US send boots on the ground? That looks pretty unlikely, but the US will provide intelligence and air support, which is very crucial to the peace effort in Ukraine. Now, the other question is, what will happen if there is a violation on the part of the Russians? Will there be sanctions against Russia, and where will those sanctions come from? If it's from the US, that has to be voted through by Congress. And the third one is, how will this Article 5 mechanism work if Ukraine is not indeed a member of NATO? That is something else that also has to be worked out. Volodymyr Zelensky remaining cautious, but optimistic, but he's still under an awful lot of pressure from the US President Donald Trump to agree to this peace process, because what Donald Trump basically wants is this to be sorted out by Christmas, and for Donald Trump himself to be more in a position to receive the Nobel Peace Prize.
And of course, we've still got to get Russia to agree to all of this as well.
OK, that is going to be the difficult thing here, because there has been no agreement on the territorial exchanges. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister has already said today there'll be no concessions on Donbass. That's a no-go era. They want that. But if you look at the opinion polls in Ukraine, about 75% of Ukrainians, when asked, this is according to the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology, saying that ceding territory or capping the size of the army without receiving clear security guarantees is completely unacceptable. So if Russia rejects this peace proposal, and the Ukrainian people, once there is a referendum, if and when that takes place, also reject it, we're back to square one. So I think there is reason to be optimistic, but also reason to be extremely cautious right now, Stuart.